Phantom.
I used to think the quiet parts of America were safe. Not the quiet you get in a city apartment at 2 a.m., where the building still breathes, pipes ticking, distant sirens, someone's TV leaking through a wall. I mean the quiet out here, where a road can run straight for miles and nothing interrupts it but grass, fences, and the occasional mailbox with a name that looks like it hasn't been repainted since the last century. I came to Bracken County because of a folder, a thin manila folder that shouldn't have mattered. It was stuffed between old receipts in a storage bin I bought at an estate sale in Cincinnati, $5 for a bin of junk, the kind of gamble you make when you like digging through other people's forgotten lives. Inside the folder were photocopies of newspaper clippings, a county map, and a handwritten note in block letters. Do not follow the whisper lines after dark. It was the kind of sentence that dares you, the kind of sentence that hooks a part of your brain you didn't know was hungry. I'm not a cop, not a ghost hunter, not even a journalist, though I've done enough freelance work to know how to ask questions without looking like I'm asking questions.
I make audio documentaries, the small kind, the ones nobody hears unless they're already the kind of person who listens to voices in the dark. So I did what I always do. I packed the basics, a handheld recorder, extra batteries, a cheap camera, a flashlight, a notebook, and a thermos of coffee that would taste like metal by midnight. Then I drove south until the cell signal went thin and the radio started to hiss like it was remembering something unpleasant. Bracken County wasn't on most maps for a reason. It wasn't remote in the dramatic sense. It was simply overlooked. A pocket of land squeezed between better-known places, with a handful of towns that felt like they were built around the idea of staying unnoticed. The town I headed for was called Lark Hollow. The name sounded soft, friendly, like a place where people sell honey by the roadside and wave at strangers. But the closer I got, the more the landscape changed in small, unsettling ways. The trees grew closer to the road, like they were leaning in. The sky seemed lower. Even the daylight looked tired, like it had traveled too far to get here. I passed a sign that said, "Welcome to Lark Hollow. Pop 1148. Please drive carefully." Under that, someone had scratched something into the metal with a nail or a knife. The letters were messy, angry. "Listen back." I slowed down without meaning to. My recorder was on the passenger seat. I hadn't even turned it on yet, but my fingers twitched toward it anyway, like it was a seatbelt I'd forgotten. The main street was a short strip of brick storefronts and faded signs. A diner, a hardware store, a little library that looked more like a house, a gas station with one pump that actually worked. I parked outside the diner because the windows were bright and I needed a place that felt normal. The bell above the door rang when I stepped in. The smell hit first. Coffee, fried oil, and something sweet that reminded me of cinnamon. It should have felt comforting. Instead, it felt staged, like a set that stayed up too long after filming wrapped. A few people looked up at me, not in the curious way, in the way animals look at something they don't recognize but don't want to run from too fast. A woman behind the counter, late 50s maybe, hair pulled back tight, watched me like she was trying to decide if I was trouble or just foolish. I sat in a booth near the window so I could see my car. She brought water without asking. The glass sweated onto the table in slow drips. "What brings you to Lark Hollow?" she asked, and her voice was polite, but the words were sharpened. I decided to tell a version of the truth, the safest kind. "Work," I said. "I record stories, local history." Her eyes flicked to my bag like she already knew what was inside. "History," she repeated, and the words sounded heavy coming out of her mouth. "We got plenty." A man in the next booth snorted into his coffee.
I opened my menu, even though I couldn't focus on the words. "I'm looking for a place to stay," I said. "Just a couple nights." The woman hesitated. That hesitation mattered more than any answer. "You can try Mara's rooms," she said finally, "over the hardware store, if she's got space." I nodded. And no, she cut in quickly, like she'd already seen where my question was going. "We don't have tours. We don't have haunted anything. We don't need attention." Her stare held mine, hard, clear. I hadn't mentioned anything haunted. I forced a small laugh. "Right, just history." She left without taking my order. I sat there with my hands on the table, listening to the diner sounds, the clink of forks, the low talk, the hum of a fridge, and underneath it all, I noticed something else. A faint, rhythmic tapping. Not from the kitchen, not from a spoon against a mug. It seemed to come from the window beside me, like something outside was lightly tapping the glass. I turned my head. Nothing was there. Just the street, empty and bright, and my own reflection looking back at me with a face that had already started to regret the drive. The tapping stopped. When the woman came back, her expression was smoother, like she'd pressed it flat. "Soup and grilled cheese?" she asked, like it was the only safe choice in the world. "Sure," I said. She set a coffee down too. The coffee was dark enough to look like it had depth. "On the house," she said, and when I tried to protest, she raised a finger, quieting me. "Just don't record in here." My throat tightened. I wasn't going to. "Good," she said, like she didn't believe me, "because we don't like our voices kept." She walked away. I stared at the coffee. Then I did the thing I'd been warned not to do. I switched on my recorder, under the table, inside my bag, so the red light wouldn't show. I kept my hand on it like I was holding a secret. For 5 minutes it captured the diner, the soft chatter, the scrape of chairs, a cough that sounded too wet, a laugh that cut off suddenly as if someone had stepped on it. Then, faintly, behind everything else, it captured something that didn't match the room. A sound like a long breath. Not mine, not anyone's. A breath that seemed too close to the microphone. I froze with my soup spoon halfway to my mouth. Across the diner, the man in the next booth looked directly at me. His eyes were pale, like watered glass. He didn't glare. He didn't threaten. He simply shook his head slowly, once, like a warning delivered without words. I switched the recorder off. My appetite vanished. After I paid, despite the free coffee, I left with my bag heavier than it should have felt. Outside, the daylight had shifted, still bright, but the shadows looked deeper, more decisive.
I walked to the hardware store. A bell rang there too, but the sound was different, lower, duller, like it had been replaced once and never sounded right again. A woman stood behind the counter, early 40s, hair in a loose braid, hands stained with something dark that might have been oil or paint.
"Mara?" I asked. She studied me in one quick scan that felt practiced. "You're the recorder guy," she said. I blinked. We don't get many strangers," she said, "and we get even fewer with that kind of bag." She nodded toward the stairs behind the counter. "Rooms open, cash only, no refunds if you decide to run." It was a joke, but her face didn't change. I handed her cash. She gave me a key with a metal tag that said, "Room 2. "Rules?" I asked, trying to keep it light. Mara leaned forward slightly. "You can record all you want in your room. You can write. You can take pictures. But don't go walking after dark, and don't follow the lines." "The lines?" I repeated, careful. Her eyes narrowed. "You already know." I didn't say anything. She continued, each word clipped and plain, like she was reading a safety manual. "If you hear your name outside your door at night, don't answer. If you hear tapping, don't look out. If you wake up and the room smells like pennies, keep your eyes shut and count to 100. My skin prickled. "That's a lot," I said. "It's enough. And one more thing." She reached under the counter and slid something toward me. A cheap cassette tape in a cracked plastic case, no label. "Listen back," she said. The same phrase from the sign. I stared at it. "What is this?" "It's yours," she said. "You just haven't made it yet." A chill moved through my chest like cold water. "That doesn't make sense." "It will," she said. Then she pointed at my bag. "Don't trust what you hear the first time. Always listen back." I took the tape because my hand moved before my brain caught up. Upstairs, the room was small and clean in a way that felt too intentional, like it had been stripped of anything personal. A bed with a thin quilt, a desk, a single window that faced the trees beyond town. On the desk sat an old tape player, waiting. I set my bag down slowly. The silence in the room wasn't normal silence. It had weight, like it wanted something from me. I pulled out my recorder and stared at it like it was an animal that might bite. Then I looked at the cassette tape. My fingers trembled as I slid it into the player. The click sounded loud. I pressed play. At first, there was only hiss, the soft ocean sound of magnetic tape. Then a voice came through. My voice. I felt my stomach drop. It was me, speaking in a low, controlled tone, the tone I use when I'm narrating. "This is Bracken County, Lark Hollow, Day 1. I stumbled backward, hitting the edge of the bed.
On the tape, my voice continued. "If you're hearing this, you already made the mistake. Don't try to leave at night. The road doesn't stay where it's supposed to." The tape hissed, then another sound bled in, tapping, rhythmic, patient, and behind it, faint and smiling, a whisper that raised every hair on my arms. "Listen back." I slapped the stop button so hard it hurt. The room felt smaller now. Outside the window, Something tapped once, very lightly on the glass. I didn't move. My heart thudded so hard it made my ears ring. The tapping came again. 2 taps, then 3, like code, like someone practicing. I sat perfectly still, eyes fixed on the floor, and remembered Mara's rule: don't look out. I reached for my recorder, turned it on with shaking hands, and set it on the desk. If something was happening, I needed proof. I needed to know I wasn't losing my mind. The tapping stopped. The air shifted. A smell crept into the room, metallic, sharp, pennies. I froze. My eyes wanted to lift, to search, to confirm. Instead, I shut them tight and started counting in my head. 1, 2, 3. At 15, I heard a sound right beside my ear, not a whisper, a breath. At 50, the breath became a voice, soft and familiar, like someone using my own throat. It said my name. At 75, something heavy leaned against the door from the outside, the wood creaking under pressure. At 75, the tapping began again, but not on the window, on the desk.
At 99, the room went perfectly silent. At 100, I opened my eyes. The smell was gone. The air felt normal again, if normal meant wrong in a quieter way. My recorder light blinked calmly, as if it hadn't just sat through something impossible. On the desk beside the recorder lay a single object that hadn't been there before. A second cassette tape. This one had a label.
I didn't sleep that night. Not really. My body was on the bed, sure, but my brain stayed awake, pacing the room like a guard dog that already smelled smoke. The second cassette tape sat on the desk the entire time, quiet, patient, like it was waiting for me to justify myself. I didn't play it. I didn't touch it. I didn't even look at the label again. I just listened to the silence. Because out here, silence is never empty. It has posture. Morning came pale and slow, the kind of sunrise that looks like it was diluted with water. I grabbed the county map from the folder again, the one from the tape. It looked normal, until it didn't. The pencil lines on it, they weren't in the same place as yesterday. Small shifts, inches maybe, but deliberate. Like someone exhaled the map into a different shape while I blinked. I drove to the library, the only building that felt like it stored memory instead of just decorating itself with it. The librarian was there already, as if she knew I'd show up early. She didn't greet me. She didn't need to. She placed a larger county map on the table between us, on top of old American oak that smelled of dust and forgotten winters. "Those are the lines," she said. Thin whisper lines drawn in pencil, branching, meandering, crossing roads that existed on paper, but maybe not on land. I asked the obvious question quietly, because the room demanded quiet. "Do they move for everyone?" She shook her head once. "They move for observers." Then she tapped the map lightly with one finger, a soft tap,
the same rhythm from the window. The pencil marks trembled, barely, subtly, as if reacting to being acknowledged. I didn't sugarcoat my reaction. I flinched. She didn't apologize for the map. She blamed the act of watching it. "Recording it makes it worse," she added. "So why draw them at all?" I asked. "Because they exist with or without ink," she said. "Drawing them just lets you pretend you found them instead of them finding you." The room cooled by 10 degrees emotionally. No fans, no AC, just the atmosphere deciding it was done acting warm. She leaned in, eyes steady, voice calm but absolute. "If you listen back to this town, the town listens back to you." Then, from the hallway outside the archive room, faint and almost playful, a whisper slid through the crack under the door. "You already made the mistake." The segment 1 line from the tape, except I never said it out loud. I left the library carrying my bag like evidence, not equipment. I asked the obvious question quietly, because the room demanded quiet. "Do they move for everyone?" She shook her head once. "They move for observers." Then she tapped the map lightly with one finger, a soft tap, the same rhythm from the window. The pencil marks trembled, barely, subtly, as if reacting to being acknowledged. I didn't sugarcoat my reaction. I flinched. She didn't apologize for the map. She blamed the act of watching it. "Recording it makes it worse," she added. "So why draw them at all?" I asked. "Because they exist with or without ink," she said. "Drawing them just lets you pretend you found them instead of them finding you." The room cooled by 10 degrees emotionally. No fans, no AC, just the atmosphere deciding it was done acting warm. She leaned in, eyes steady, voice calm but absolute. "If you listen back to this town, the town listens back to you." Then, from the hallway outside the archive room, faint and almost playful, a whisper slid through the crack under the door. "You already made the mistake." The segment 1 line from the tape, except I never said it out loud. I left the library carrying my bag like evidence, not equipment.
I record stories for a living, but Lark Hollow recorded me first. Daylight felt safer, so I walked Main Street again at 10 a.m. The town looked normal. Clean signs, parked trucks, Christmas lights still clinging to gutters even though December was weeks away. I checked my watch, 10:14. I checked it again after tying my boot, 11:37. No memory of the hour between. No blur, no confusion, just a clean gap like an audio file that never rendered. That was the first time the town went quiet in my head, too. People around me acted like nothing was strange. A kid biked past, a dog barked twice, then stopped like someone hit mute. I asked the kid for the date. He said it right, perfectly, calmly. But when I played my recorder later, the kid's answer came out warped and layered with static underneath, like the town had 2 channels running at once. One truth spoken, one truth kept. Back in the library basement, I found shelves of old cassette tapes labeled by year.
Not just town history, town witnesses, different narrators, same warnings, same tapping, same missing hours. I played one tape, a man's voice from 1999, steady like mine. History will repeat until the listener stops listening. Then a second voice, softer, answering him mid-sentence. And you didn't stop. A duet where only one singer was alive.
That night, I heard a knock at my rented room door. Not loud, just deliberate. The voice outside said my name in my tone, my pacing, my breathing pattern. I hadn't recorded anything new that day, but the knock sounded like a file playing back through a human speaker. Mara's rule flashed in my mind: don't answer. So I didn't. I let the knock die into the dark like unsent mail. Then, under my door, a strip of light bloomed faint blue. My recorder, still off, glowed like it was capturing without permission. The voice came again, but slower now, like it was savoring punctuation. If you're hearing this. I didn't press play. I didn't need to. The town had already hit record on the next chapter. Dawn felt like a checkpoint, not a rescue. I drove to the county's edge to test the loop theory. The GPS showed a straight exit. The road said otherwise. After 8 miles, the same water tower appeared again. Identical rust, identical dents, identical bird nest on top. Copy-paste architecture built out of geography. At dusk, I finally followed a whisper line on foot. It led to a dried creek bed behind the old church. The salt-dry stones formed shapes that looked like open mouths mid-whisper. Not screaming, just speaking without lungs. I recorded the creek anyway. When I played it back, the audio layered itself into a low choral hum. A choir made of overlap, not voices. No lyrics, no gore, just the sound of repetition achieving harmony. The hollow echoed identity. I realized the pattern. The county doesn't haunt you emotionally. It archives you structurally. It copies tone, cadence, footsteps, and time. Then it turns copies into consensus. I looked at my recorder. The red light was off, but the mic was warm. The creek smelled like iron. The church bells didn't ring, they vibrated. And in that vibration, faint, patient, certain, we heard you the first time. Mara met me outside before the hardware store opened. Cold morning, one key in her hand, coffee in mine. She didn't smile. This wasn't the kind of town that rewards curiosity. You keep treating this like a mystery, she said. It's not a mystery, it's a pattern. And patterns don't chase, they replace. She told me the truth in bullets, like commands. The county has been recording witnesses for decades. The lines aren't supernatural paths, they're boundaries of memory. The loop breaks if someone records without narrating themselves into it. The tapes don't want blood, they want voice and permanence. No drama,
no metaphors, just mechanics. I asked the question that felt risky. So the danger isn't the dark? No, she said. The danger is thinking you're still the narrator. She slid the key toward me. Room 1, not 2, not the same room. If you record tonight, record like you're describing nothing, because the moment you describe yourself, the county keeps you. I pocketed the key. No thanks, no commentary. Mara turned, walked away, boots quiet on asphalt. The rule was clear now. Don't narrate yourself into the recording. Don't answer your own name. Don't trust a straight road. And never listen back to the silence twice.
I found the storm shelter by accident, or so I thought. Half-buried metal door behind the county school, paint stripped, bolts rusted but aligned like someone maintained them out of fear. No narration. I let the recorder run while I opened it. The hinge groaned. The mic captured that too clearly. Inside, concrete, one chair, one light bulb. No echo, no wind, no people, no humming wires. Perfect for recording nothing. So I recorded exactly that. Air, steps, zipper, breathing held back. The county hated the absence of identity. It preferred witnesses that named themselves. This was my first correct decision. I tested playback anyway. The tape lied back instantly. My footsteps continued after I stopped walking. Then static layered underneath like a second crowd, murmuring approval. I shut it off. Playback was the trap. The town didn't scream, it edited. On the shelter wall, someone carved a message clean and calm. The first lie is your voice. But this time, the lie wasn't coming from me. The lie was thinking the county ever needed me to speak first.